And welcome to a DIY prop showcase video. My name is Luke Triton and it has been a damn long time since I've done one of these. It has been fascinating to make a prop again, and it was a really good idea to make something small as well. So this is my customized version of the Ben 10 Omnitrix, the original Omnitrix, mind you. I went back and looked at some of the newer seasons, and the artwork isn't something that I would really kind of agree with. You know, in the whole idea of it being a reboot and you're supposed to kind of redo things, just stick with the original or make something new for goodness sakes. It was so interesting to see characters remade, and the Anti-Trix and the Ultimatrix and so many more I kind of want to get a hold of now, you know. Child at heart, being a collector and all the rest. But this I thought was an interesting idea because the Omnitrix is a very cool device. And I have another one. So what you're seeing here is the first one I got, the very first Omnitrix toy I ever got my hands on. It is very beaten up, it is very damaged internally, the electronics aren't the best. Lights and sounds kind of work, but they don't want to work, if that makes sense. I can't really turn it on because, you know, I did a take before this and it was surprising how well the lights and sounds worked, and then it just stopped working altogether, so we're like, great. So after that started breaking, I bought a second one, again at the same time I was buying that one, which was well over a decade ago. And yeah, recently I thought, you know what, Ben 10 was pretty cool. It was trending on Twitter about, well, for me, a week ago. For by the time this goes out, it could be about 3 months ago, who knows. But it was trending for a day and I thought, why is it trending? Nobody knows, but you know what, it doesn't matter. Ben 10 is a banger of a kids show. I think I was the last generation that could enjoy Ben 10. I was growing at the time when Ben 10 first came out, and there was all the new shows coming out like Alien Force and the remake, and that's not to say it's not successful now, but I don't think it was as good as it was originally. The original Omnitrix in particular was a very cool design. So after finding my Omnitrix toys, I thought, you know what, I want to redo the strap to make it look like the actual thing. So what you're seeing here is some foam that comes from, you know, I actually got it here. Timing, aha! So this is a bedroll, the sort of thing you would take camping. And yeah, I chose to go with that foam instead of EVA foam, like floor mat foam. It's because that is a lot softer, it's much easier to shape. Spray painting is much nicer as well, it kind of goes into the foam a little bit, which I thought was kind of a little bonus as well. And yeah, so cutting that out and putting it into shape was actually quite nice, but I didn't think about heating the foam to take this form. Thankfully, I found a kind of sneaky solution. This wasn't intentional, but I thought it was genius. So the cables I have here are actual wires. You know, you go to a hardware store, you get a meter of loose cable, you snip it off and you just buy that meter. So I had loads of that left over and I bought that meter of wire, fuck knows how long ago, back when I was making props on the regular. Wrapped it in some thin white foam, shaped it to this curved piece, and kind of forced the foam to take this position. Now that was, you know, it was a bit cheaty because I wasn't expecting anything like that to work. I was thinking, oh my god, if I have to form it like this, I'll have to use the strap to actually keep it together. But no, thankfully that technique worked. But the only thing that didn't really work was how I was going to connect these to the toy itself. That makes sense though, because I was measuring all of this when it was flat, not whilst it was curved. And so on one side, if I actually turn it this way, you can see these white pieces overlap on one side, but they're a bit shorter on the other side. But when it comes to actually, again, when it comes to actually connecting it to the toy, there was always going to be that little gap there. So I just had a bit of small 2mm foam. I've been doing that for the past few days. When I say foam, I say thome. I can't get into the habit of doing that, otherwise I'll give myself an unintentional lisp. Anyway, foam, foam, foam. 2mm foam. Used also the same thing I was using to cover the cables, just to fill in that gap there, just a bit of glue, nothing to really overcomplicate things. You can definitely see it, you know, from a distance or even up close. Well, of course you will up close. But it's not something that's going to kind of break your immersion or whatever. You see this, you go, oh yeah, it's pretty cool, yeah, you had to do that to put it together, but you know, not the end of the world. On the inside, you can't really see the inside. You kind of did for a second. Not too, no, you can't really see inside, that's okay. But I was using a selection of tapes and glues and some more black card to attach the inside of the toy to the inside of the strap as well, otherwise it will just open itself back up like that. And of course in the middle is the, can I actually show this bit off? I want to actually do that. Okay, there you go. So here where my pinky finger is pointing to now, that is the door to access the batteries. Now, if I covered that, that would mean in time the toy would run out of batteries and I would never be able to change them again. Thankfully, I was able to build the strap in a way where there was a hole for me to gain access to the battery door, but things changed, so now I can get to it much easier anyways. Especially with that gap in the middle, I could just get a screwdriver in through there, unscrew it, happy days. So yeah, because this is a working toy, it does have lights and sounds. We're going to turn this on. There are 3 sections: off, try me, and on. Ready? Let's hope this works. Oh yes, such a cool sound. Now there are 10 aliens on this Omnitrix, like the OG original Omnitrix. It's a bit difficult to see there. I mean, you can kind of see it, but the camera isn't going to really focus on this camera view. When you turn the headpiece, it does make another noise. And when you hear that, when it continues to make that noise, that's because I'm turning this headpiece, you know, quite quickly. So let's try and go over all 10 aliens and see if I can name them all. So starting off, grey matter, forearms, rip jaws, accelerates, diamond head, stink fly, heat blast, wild mutt, ghost freak. Oh, he was so cool as a villain. Upgrade. And back to grey matter. I think I did alright there. I did look some alien, some Ben 10 stuff up a few days ago when I started making this. And yeah, so that's all the 10 aliens that you get with the original Omnitrix. There were future Omnitrix toys that kind of changed the aliens, and of course with the show going on, more aliens were introduced. So now that it's upwards like this, you can now slam it down. When I say slam it down, it doesn't actually go down too much, but let me show you. There we go. There we go. So what that sound represents is unique to the TV show, and I think the explanation for it makes sense as well. So another thing I learned when it came to kind of just Ben 10, kind of revisiting the franchise as a whole, that sound and that kind of relation to the TV show, it's basically Ben transforming into the aliens. So take forearms, for example. When you see his arms getting bigger, you know, 2 more arms come out and he goes red and he kind of goes into that pose. That's just for the sake of the TV show. In real life, if he were to slam that down, the transformation would be that quick. That is actually really cool to know, because it's something for the viewer, but in real life you would know that's never going to happen. So if you actually turned into forearms, you slam this down, you turn into forearms, you're not going to all of a sudden, you know, pose, for goodness sakes. You're not Hulk Hogan. You want to get in the fights. So yeah, I think that's actually really cool. Between that sound and the ending sound, which we will hear in a few seconds, is exactly one... Oh, here we go. So, yes, that is the sound that the Omnitrix would make when Ben would transform back into his human self. In the show, it would be 10 minutes. On the toy, it's 1 minute. I'm pretty sure it's correct because I can remember way back when counting that. I have no reason to believe that would change, especially with new or old batteries. And hopefully you could definitely count that with the timer at the bottom of the video. 60 seconds, 1 minute, lovely jubbly. Or infinite time, depending on how creative you want to be. So, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. It's a very simple toy, but for what it is, I think it's really cool, very nostalgic. Right, so I'm going to have to put this on now. Putting it on isn't too difficult, but there's one thing I want to try and make sure of. So when I'm holding it this side, I want to close that as much as I can first of all, then bring over the strap, just to make sure that it is as tight as possible, that's not going to come off. So there we go, there it is on my wrist, and having to position it is a bit difficult because of how the straps are positioned, so it's a bit difficult to see. On this side it goes like that, on this side it's more like that. I can still look at this plenty fine. I could definitely, you know, turn this and play with it. There's not going to be any kind of breakage, it's not going to want to break off the foam. I can press it, pull it around, there's plenty of movement in the wrist as well, so it's not going to be yanked off. I'm not going to be dangerous with it either. Yeah, I think the Ben 10 Omnitrix is one of the cooler props I've made. It's so small, it's so simple, but it's the Omnitrix. It's such a cool device. I love it so much. So when it comes to actually attaching the two wrist pieces together, it's just a bit of card I've got going down the middle, kind of to break up the design, or not design, but the pattern, that's what I'm looking for. To break up the pattern of the foam so it looks solid, it looks smooth. And it's just simple Velcro to connect the two together. Don't need to be anything else. I don't need to try and do something to where it could potentially rip off. I don't need to use anything thicker than this where it potentially rip. Just small, simple, and absolutely spectacular. Okay, let's close that back up. The Omnitrix from Ben 10. This is, again, one of the coolest things I've ever made. It's so nostalgic for me. I'm only 22 years old, but thinking back to Ben 10 and kid shows from me, it's like, oh my god, it's just really fun, really cool. This is something I'm hoping to keep around for a long time, just to put the two together. I guess I'll do that before we end the video. So we've got the toy section in the middle, and the handles are so different. You know what I did as well? I looked at the Ben 10 movie, I think it's called Race Against Time, and looked at how that Omnitrix was designed as well. And I think in comparison to the movie version, it's actually pretty good. Oh yeah, that's one more reminder as well. If anybody watched the prop chop shop video, they would know around the end of the video that I said I was going to try and add a few more decorational pieces just to bring it more, it wasn't not so much to life, but just to bring it out a little bit more, give it a bit more colour, a bit more pizzazz. But since then, I've barely had to touch it at all. If anything, I've had to go over some sections with a black marker, because the foam is, well, if I just grab this, the foam is originally blue. So just to cover it up and make it all look black, I'm not going to go into the inside because you're not going to see that, but there are some sections I've had to go over with a black marker pen just to tidy that up. But yeah, if anything, that's pretty much it. So the Ben 10 Omnitrix, an interesting prop to get back into this hobby with. It has been a very long time since I've done anything proper cosplay-wise. That's mainly because of lockdown taking place. I had cos plans, and thanks to this, I now have a Ben 10 cos plan. Ah, so good. Just really cool. Get yourself an Omnitrix, look up Ben 10, banger of a kids show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all ever so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.